And there he is.
How's it going?
Good. How are you,
Good. Thank you,
Congressman?
Cindy, for inviting me to this.
Oh, no, we're happy to have you. So I know that you have a limited amount of time with us. So we're going to jump right in. I think we have some folks on, and we're going to, I know that some people will continue to stream in as we go. But just as in the interest of propriety, my name is Cindy Bonnier, and I am the CEO of the Fremont Chamber of Commerce. And here with us today, we have Congressman Eric Swalwell and Vartan Djihanian. Did I say that right?
You got it.
Okay, good. I finally got it right.
Hey, Vartan.
Fourth time's a charm. And Vartan is with the US Chamber of Commerce. So we're happy to have both of them here with us today. I know that Congressman Swalwell wants to, I guess you have some comments, and then we're going to have some questions for you. Okay, perfect. With that, though, I know Vartan has like a quick minute that he wants to have something to say. So we're going to let him jump right in there.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and thank you to you and to Matt and your entire team at the Fremont Chamber for all your work, all the work you've done over the past few months in helping businesses navigate the loan processes and all the work that you've done. You've really been on the front lines in supporting small businesses as we've gone through these shutdowns. So very grateful for that. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep it brief. One of the best parts of my job is that I'm able to help recognize members of Congress who have been supportive of the business community. And for the past 30 years, we've been doing this at the U.S. Chamber by presenting members with what we call the Spirit of Enterprise Award. This award is presented to members of Congress based on a few criteria. Traditionally, we've been giving it to members strictly based on their votes. We would look at anywhere from 15 to 18 key votes in Congress. This last year, we looked at 18 on issues ranging anywhere from repealing the Cadillac tax to the passage of the USMCA agreement. And by looking at those votes, traditionally, if you received a certain threshold, you were eligible to receive the award. But this year, we've modified it a little bit. We were also judging members of Congress based on their work on bipartisanship. We're really trying to rebuild the middle in Congress at the U.S. Chamber, so we want to reward bipartisanship, and also on the legislative leadership of members of Congress. If they've co-sponsored certain pieces of legislation, or if they've stayed off of really bad anti-small business pieces of legislation. So I'm very pleased to say today that after looking at all that criteria, we're very pleased to award Congressman Swalwell with the U.S. Chamber Spirit of Enterprise Award. Congressman has been a tremendous asset to the small business community over the last year in his legislative support, and also especially for his support on the U.S. MCA. He's been tremendously helpful with that. This is what the award looks like. Traditionally, we have a big ceremony in Washington for all the awardees, but this year, of course, because of the shutdowns, we haven't been able to do that. This is actually Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard's award, but Congressman, you'll be receiving your award soon in the mail. So with that, congratulations. We're very grateful for all your support for small businesses this last year.
Thank you, Vartan, for the award. Thank you to the Chamber for the award, and thank you to our local Chamber members. And thanks for engaging with small businesses, especially during a time like this. The Chamber knows that there's not been a more trying time in our lifetime for small businesses than the time we are in right now. And you're doing everything you can to persevere, to take care of your employees, to take care of your customers' needs, particularly if you are deemed essential workers, but also, to hold us together as community, because you are the lighthouses in our community when people are in despair and need hope. I was a city council member and a planning commissioner before going to Congress, and my office is a member of our local Chamber of Commerce. And I was able to work with local chambers as a city council member and saw the value, of small business. And I'm proud that while on the Dublin City Council, I worked to try and expand business opportunities in Dublin and grow our businesses and create more jobs, and ultimately increase the number of sales tax dollars that were coming into the city so we could provide police, fire, and city services. And I know that you take a lot of pride in the fact that many of you are able to contribute to doing that. But here we find ourselves in the midst of this pandemic. And I have to say, we made the right call early on by being one of the first places in the country to shelter in place, but it really feels like we're victims of our own success, because I still look at the numbers every single day of new cases in Alameda County and hospitalization rates in Alameda County. And throughout March and April and even early May, I would just kind of do a little fist pump every time I saw, the numbers come in and it's around 25, 30 new cases. And, that was really, really small compared to other counties in the country of our size. And I just thought, we're doing this. Like we're all putting our heads down. We're following the rules. We're going to come out first. And I thought naively that we went in first to shelter in place. We'll lead the way out first. But we have somehow found ourselves in the same exact position as states who did not really shelter in place, whose businesses did stay open, did not have to suffer as much as our businesses did. And the question is, well, why? How could we have made two completely different decisions and find ourselves in the same place? And that's why I say it really feels like we're victims of our own success, because as other states started to open across the country, I believe, because when I talk to our local experts, there's been no increase in testing capacity. We've always had robust testing capacity in our area. There's an increase in the positive cases, which means I think just psychologically and emotionally, we saw other states opening up and we started to, go out a little bit more, and we felt a little bit more confident about what was going on. And now we're seeing in Alameda County, the effect of going backward. We had started to phase into more reopenings, and now we're going backward. It's frustrating for me. And I get the text messages and phone calls from many of you in your small businesses, and I know what it means to your business. And so my pledge, first and foremost, is on any individual specific case, please call on us, and our office information is in there, but I'm going to type in right now my email address, and I'll put my cell phone as well. Email or text or call me if you have an issue around a paycheck protection loan, or an emergency disaster loan, or any other small business loan where we could help. If you have questions about unemployment insurance for your employees and who qualifies, or if you're self-employed and you wonder if you are now able to qualify for unemployment insurance, please let us know. We are happy to help. Sorry, I have a 3-year-old and 1-year-old who just got home. So that is what we do. That's what we are proud to work on. But also, I'm in Washington for the balance of the month. And one second, I'm going to actually step outside so you guys can hear me better.
That's okay. This is life now.
I'm in Washington until the end of the month, and we will be working on, for the next couple of weeks, hopefully a bipartisan deal on reloading the Paycheck Protection Plan. And so my promise to you is that we're going to try and strike a deal with the Senate, reload the plan, reload unemployment insurance. I want to make sure that if there are any unintended consequences of unemployment insurance where employees are not going back to work because they're making more on unemployment insurance, that we can address that. And please bring that to my attention, because that is not the intent of our efforts here. And I've heard that anecdotally, but we want to address that if that is an issue, because we want people to work, we want businesses to reopen. Now, one of the initiatives that I passed that got put into the CARES Act was one of the first pieces of legislation I wrote, called the Main Street Revival Act, which allows businesses to defer their payroll taxes for their first 3 years. So if you're a business of 25 or fewer employees, you can defer for your first 3 years. Well, that got folded in, at least for this year and next, into the CARES Act. We're trying to make it permanent. And John Katko, a Republican from New York, and I have introduced that legislation. And that's a big priority for me, is to give more businesses startup capital, early on when they need it the most. So let's get to the questions. But again, my information is in the chat box. and I would be happy to help in any way I can. And I appreciate everything all of you are doing to try and get us all through this.
Okay, great. We have a couple questions. Let me start out with one. You have the HEROES Act passed, and we are kind of looking forward to seeing what the next stimulus package will be. Do you have anything to add to that? From what you've already talked about, the revival, the Main Street revival and everything.
Yeah, the HEROES Act, what I think is important for us locally, has $1 trillion across the country for state and local governments and what they've spent on COVID relief. So that could be their healthcare costs, that could be their doctors and nurses, bus drivers, essential workers who've had to work, just anything they've had to cover, it would backfill them. And to give you perspective on California, we started in January with nearly a $10 billion surplus in California, and we now have a $40 billion deficit. And so we have swung wildly into deficit land. And so the HEROES Act would backfill for states like California what they have lost because of COVID, but also provides hazard pay for essential frontline workers, reloads the Paycheck Protection Plan. It allows a deduction for any business expenses that you spend on sanitizing your workplace. Also would increase the payroll tax credit from right now. I believe, and Vartan, correct me, I believe it's 50% credit right now, and getting a local delivery, multitasking with kids, mail. It would allow you to, I think, Vartan, it's an 80% payroll tax credit if the HEROES Act is passed. So I'm not naive to think that the HEROES Act is going to become law, but I do believe that as we get to the end of July and the unemployment insurance begins to run out, that there is going to be an incentive for both parties to work together to get it passed.
Okay, perfect. So before we go on, there's a couple in the chat. Some folks said that they can't speak, which that's because we're in a webinar format. So if you have questions, be sure to put them there because I'm going to start addressing those in just a minute. I do have one, and I'm going to just take a selfish moment here, is that we were disappointed to see that Chambers of Commerce did not qualify for the PPP. And it's especially disappointing because a lot of small businesses are relying on Chambers right now to help them through some of the processes, to give them information. And, we are put in a position where, we are either having to or will have to furlough employees, and we won't be able to provide the services. And of all the people that should probably get a PPP or be in line along with everyone else is a chamber, so that we can be there to be that support system for them. So what do you see on the horizon for that?
Yeah, I support that. I believe you're organized as a C6, is that right?
Correct, yes. Right,
and so I support that. I have heard that from, I'm on the leadership team in the House, so the Speaker has about a 14-member leadership team, and every week we do a leadership call, and that issue has come up a number of times on our side of wanting to get that into any bipartisan deal that is struck. So it's important to me, and I hope that it would be included. Vartan, are you hearing anything on a deal as far as what Republicans would take on that front?
On the House side, we're very happy to see that funding for C6s were included in the HEROES Act. I know in the Senate, Senator Marco Rubio has really championed it. Senator Cruz has championed it. I think with Majority Leader McConnell, he has said that he's kind of hung up on the issue about liability issues when it comes to individuals suing businesses. in case they acquired COVID or they think they acquired COVID at a business or through their employer. So I think that's the sticking point for Senator McConnell. He's saying that he's not going to approve any additional stimulus money unless that's included in there. But besides that, we've seen a lot of support on the Senate side, so we're hopeful that funding for C6s will be included in the next round. But but we've heard that before, so we'll see what ends up happening.
Okay, well, we appreciate you being an advocate for both that, because we think that's considerably important in this whole thing. Okay, I'm going to jump to questions from some of these folks that are on with us. And first one is from actually Mallory. So it says, we had a constituent who received a PPP loan early in the process. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to use the funds and return to the bank. However, when the shelter-in-place order was extended, she went back to her bank and was told she could not apply for the funds. Can you help us out with that one?
Yes. So that's why I put my information in there, because, as Mallory points out, we've worked with a number of cases like this. So what we can do case by case is work with you as different community ordinances are put in place to see how it affects you. Phil Tucker is our staffer who deals with PPP loans. He was a Safeway executive for nearly 30 years, so he has a business background. So we are able to work, as I said, individually on these issues, and then as far as legislatively, what would need to be included in the next round. So yeah, I'm looking at the rest of Mallory's question in the chat. And so, yes, the hope is that if you do not use funds, but now you find yourself in a position where you may need to use them, that you could go back, and draw on that. One other benefit that we put out there, and it's not a great thing, but it's, people need resources right now. It's not great that people would have to do this, is allowing people to draw on their 401k. And I know a lot of small businesses have asked me if that would be included when we first passed the legislation, and it allows you to do that. You can take it out without an early penalty. And I don't know, Vartan, if that's something the chamber has worked on as well. Again, I don't. It's unfortunate if anyone's in a position they have to do that, but cash is cash right now, and there's so many good small businesses who want to try and keep their business open and take care of their employees, and that was another just kind of line of resources we wanted to provide. Okay.
We have someone, Tanya Shore, who is an event planner. She manages and plans social events, and we all know that the whole event industry has been pretty much decimated by this whole thing. Her question is, I am wondering what Congress is planning to do to help the live event industry. And on top of all that, especially now that a lot of these parents who are part of the live event industry are homeschooling their kids and don't have time to do work, although I don't know that there's a lot of work out there for them to do right now. So is there any hope for the live event industry? Any other help that you can provide?
Yes, I'm looking at, and Tanya, I hope you check out the Restart Act, which is around this issue. So the live event industry is in a unusual position that almost no other industry finds itself in that they literally are the last group that will be able to reopen under any federal or local phasing or gating that is taking place. And unlike sports, where up to 80% of the revenues in professional sports can come from TV contracts, in live events, that's just not the case. So, for concerts or, the performing arts, that's not the case. And they have the strictest rules in place. So I've been following this. I've been working with, in our area, we have, Live Nation has laid off, I think, 90% of its employees in San Francisco. I've worked with other local CEOs of live event companies looking at how can we carve out a relief package for folks in this industry, because you're absolutely right, with PPP running out. And as one CEO of a live event company told me yesterday, he said, Eric, although PPP gives us, 10 weeks, we were really only able to cover about, because of the cost of living in California, about 1 month. And this is a penalty that we pay in California because it's very hard to get my colleagues to go along with a cost of living adjustment for, regional cost of living. So when the PPP says that you cannot pay an employee more than $100,000, well, that's great in Omaha or Tulsa, but in the Bay Area, we know that you could have employees on your payroll, who, if you have a bunch of them who make $80,000, $90,000, it's going to eat into, your PPP $10 million cap, and that's a problem. So I've always believed we need to regionally adjust, these programs for the cost of living and high cost areas. But that is, just to be straight with you, that's probably not going to happen. And that's just a price that Californians pay more than anyone else.
Okay. And I have a question from Kathy Kimberlin, who is the president of the Fremont Centerville Business and Community Association. She is wondering, how will recovery be addressed among local big business versus small business?
Yeah, and the way I see it is that, if you're an employee at a big business or an employee at a small business, it really doesn't matter to you, whether it's a big business or a small business, because, the employees, big businesses have had massive layoffs, small businesses have as well. So I think on the unemployment insurance side, regardless of what business, you're in, we want to continue to fund, unemployment insurance so people can get through this. Now, that being said, I think there is a difference between a small business and a big business when it comes to, the capital that they have and their ability to ride out, being shuttered. And so, really prioritizing, our small businesses, when it comes to, forgivable loans, to me, that is really important. That's why the Main Street Revival Act caps, eligibility at 25 employees, because we know that, there's a big difference between a company with 250 employees and 25 employees. So, in many ways, as I said, when it comes to unemployment insurance, I don't draw a distinction between whether you work for a big business or a small business. If you're unemployed, you're unemployed, and you don't really draw a distinction either. But I do believe for the capital that, a small business owner needs, it's often much harder to get because you don't have the same line of credit, as a big business would. And then that was one of the early problems with the Paycheck Protection Plan, was that the banks, if you're a bank and you can do a loan up to $10 million and you're getting 4 to 5 points on each loan, you're going to prioritize the $10 million loans, and you're going to do those first before you do the $150,000 loan. And so that's why the next round of Paycheck Protection Plan, we tried to expand the qualified lenders, who could distribute the funds so that, our small businesses were able to get it. I don't think we were perfect in it, but when you look at how quickly we moved and the amount of money that was funded, I do think people will look back on it and say that we showed tremendous agility to try and get as much money out the door. We're still learning, and that's why if you have ideas for me, I hope you share them, because we want to keep getting better at how we're doing this.
Okay, great. I want to be respectful of your time. We do have a few more questions. Are you okay to keep going?
I'm hopping on another local Zoom, but I could do about 5 more minutes. Yeah. Okay.
So I think this is probably a pretty quick one for you. Paul Seppi, who is a board director of the Alameda County Water District, is questioning HR 7073, which is the Special Districts Provide Essential Services Act. Are you supporting this bill?
I'll look at it, Paul. I think the nature of the bill is to make sure that they, qualify for relief. I agree that special districts, are essential services. I know the different, special districts we have in our area, from water to mosquito abatement to, fire protection, and want to make sure that they are taken care of. And that's why I believe passing the state and local government relief is so critical, because you would qualify for that. But as far as 7073, I'll look at that, Paul, and make sure that we get back to you. And thank you, Paul, for your service on the County Water District.
Okay, so it looks like I actually just have one one more question, and that is again from Kathy Kimberlin. And her question is, please share your thoughts on the upcoming county supervisors election. Personally, I'm very concerned that we have a supervisor who will work with nonprofits and small businesses.
You know, my top priority in that race, and I've not endorsed a candidate, but is to make sure that, you know, the supervisor understands the need for extending the Dublin, Pleasant, and Bard Station up and over the Altamont through a project called Valley Link. It would be over 50 miles, the train moving up to speeds of 110 miles per hour, taking 30,000 cars off the road each day, recognizing the linkage between San Joaquin County and Alameda County, and that the congestion is just intolerable, and that it would be good for our economy and their economy if people spent more time with their family and less time in their commute. And so that's my top priority. Supervisor Haggerty has been a champion for that. He's been a good partner in working with him on that. And I'm confident that come January, infrastructure improvements are going to be a big priority, and that if that project is ready to go, it will be a top candidate for federal dollars. So, you know, that's the issue that I hope both candidates running can really be, you know, leading on, because we will need someone to do the same work that Scott Haggerty has done for so many years on the issue.
Okay, and we're going to circle back to Paul Sethi's question. I missed this additional part of it. I'm sorry. It says ACWD has seen a significant reduction in commercial water use, and there is risk to millions of dollars in revenue from commercial water customers.
Yep.
What relief can we expect? And you're looking at the question?
I'm not asking the question, but I'm familiar with the issue, and it's the county is obviously seeing property owners are asking for reassessments of their commercial property owners are asking for reassessments right now because they can't do business and they want to be assessed lower in the property taxes they pay, which is fair. But you know, the challenge, of course, is that the county has planned in its funding of police and fire and other essential hospital services around receiving pre-COVID property dollars. And so that's where that HEROES Act $1 trillion backfill for state and local governments is so critical, because it would make up for shortfalls that would affect the water district as much as it would affect you know, the Alameda County tax assessments, and also, you know, the city of Fremont as well. So that's what this crisis has meant, you know, for us locally, and that's why I believe, you know, backfilling state and local you know, deficits is critically needed.
Okay, and in that is, you know, he's mentioned there's $250 million in shovel-ready projects that are also at risk. Is that included in what you just mentioned? The support for that as well?
Most transit agencies and local utility agencies are trying to keep you know, the stove warm on those issues. Now, it's going to be hard to staff you know, those priorities if, you know, we continue, you know, in a shutdown. But I've been working with yesterday I spoke to the Metropolitan Transit Commission, and, you know, they have a number of projects in Plan Bay Area, you know, period 1 and period 2, and they're trying to keep them as warm as possible, because there is an anticipation of massive infrastructure dollars coming to every community as part of a COVID recovery package. So I hope that if Alameda County has anything in the water district, that, you know, they could alert us to that, and we can try and work with them on it. Okay,
great. With that, I'm just going to give you any other message you want to share with us before you leave us?
No, thank you again, Cindy and Vartan. Thank you for the award. You know, to our small businesses, and I talked to Bill at Massimo's. I don't think he's on here, but he reminds me often about the challenge that our restaurants face. I'm sorry you're going through this. I know how hard it is, you know, and, you know, I have family members who've lost their jobs. One of them works at a gym, and gyms are in a tough spot right now. Yeah. And no, I get it. And I'm trying to learn from you as to what we can do individually but also, as I said, legislatively, keep giving us ideas. It very much feels like we're, building the plane after takeoff, but that doesn't mean we can't do it, and we have to do it because you're depending on it. So thank you for being, a community that has adhered to the guidelines that we've given, and thank you for trying to show, resilience and compassion under tremendous stress.
Okay, thank you so much. My message to you: C6s, PPP.
Yes.
Go get them, Eric. Thank you so much, and we'll say goodbye to you now. Have a good day. Okay, we're with Vartan now, and for those of you who are not familiar with Vartan, he is the manager of the Western Region in the Congressional and Public Affairs Division of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. He helps develop pro-business legislative and political activities in the 5 Western states. And he also assists with the Chamber's efforts to strengthen its relationship with members of Congress. So thank you for being with us today, Vartan
Djihanian.
Djihanian.
Close,
Djihanian?
yeah. Yep, you got it.
Okay, I'm gonna get this. All right, thank you so much. Why don't you share your thoughts with us? And I do have some questions for you. And I'm just gonna remind our audience that if anyone has questions that they would like to pose to Vartan, please put them in the chat room and we will cycle through them as quickly as we can. So I'll leave you with that, Vartan.
Great, thank you so much, Cindy. And like I was mentioning earlier, thank you so much for all the work that you've done at the Fremont Chamber. I know that a lot of small businesses in your community have come to you and your team for support as they navigate all the loan programs, all the shutdown schedules, everything that's going on. So we're very grateful for that. And I think that really underlines why it's so important to get this PPP funding for C6s in the next round.
Mm-hmm.
This outreach that you did to the congressman, I know he's already very receptive to this, is very helpful because when he has those leadership meetings in Washington, he can take back a story and say, look, I was just on a call with the Fremont Chamber and they're in need of this funding. So so that kind of outreach is critical. And I think that, like I was discussing with Cindy earlier, one silver lining from these from the shutdowns is that members of Congress, not just in your area, because I know the congressman's already accessible to you, is that a lot of members of Congress are now much more available just because their schedules are open to this. So I think that's going to help us get this funding for the chambers, because chambers around the country are now doing calls like this with their congressmen. So thank you for that. And whatever, if any of your members can help write letters or to reach out to the congressman's office, it's always nice to have additional support for that. And I want to talk about how this type of outreach has been so helpful. Initially, when we were trying to get the PPP loans through, we got a lot of support from the small business community. And then afterwards, once it was implemented, folks came back to us and they said, look, the 8 weeks is not enough. We need to stretch this out to 24 weeks. With the help of chambers around the country and with the small businesses, we were able to appeal to Congress to expand that timetable where you're able to use the PPP loans. And also another item that we were able to help amend is initially they said that 3/4 of the money that you spend from the PPP loans need to be used for payroll purposes. We got that reduced to 60%, so the remaining 40% can be used for other expenses like utilities, rent or mortgage interest, and actually they also included transportation costs at the end. So now you're able to have a little more flexibility with the funding that you receive through the PPP program. If there are any businesses on here who have not yet received those funds, please reach out to your local community banks. You can reach out to national banks. You can even reach out to fintech companies like PayPal and Square. Some of these other non-traditional lenders are also participating. There's over $100 billion left in the program, so we want to make sure that folks who have not had access to it will still utilize them. Also, like we discussed with the congressman, there's a lot of discussion of having additional funding in the next round. So if your PPP money is running out now, I don't want to give you false hope, but there's a lot of discussion about perhaps expanding that funding. There's also talk of, I know you talked about the entertainment industry, about maybe doing some targeted funding, whether the target would be geographically where they do additional funding for areas that are having coronavirus hotspots, or if they do it by industry. So if you're in live entertainment, perhaps they would do additional funding. I know there's a lot of discussions happening right now in Congress. But like I was mentioning earlier, the holdup for this is going to be Senator Mitch McConnell on the Senate side has said that he will not approve any additional stimulus money unless there's liability protection included for small businesses. Because I don't know if if you turn on the TV, you'll see a lot of these unscrupulous attorneys who come out and say, did you acquire COVID by going to a restaurant, or did you get COVID at the workplace? Call this number and we're going to help you sue the business. And so what we're saying is, if you're a small business that has taken protections and has taken precautions to make sure that your customers or your employees don't get COVID, whether it's hand sanitizer or face masks, if you've taken all those precautions, you should have a safe harbor. Those folks should not be able to sue you if you've taken all those steps. So Senator McConnell on the Senate side is saying that unless that liability protection is included in the next stimulus package, he will not move forward. And quite frankly, we agree with him, because the last thing small businesses need right now to really put the final nail in them is to be sued. If someone comes up to you and says, I got COVID at your restaurant, or I got COVID at your coffee shop. So we would appreciate any support that you could provide for us. One thing that we do at the US Chamber is quite frequently we'll send out letters to Congress, and we'll include signatories. So we'll say, we'll reach out to all the chambers and say, please sign this letter, so that when we send it to Congress, when Congressman Swalwell looks at the letter, he'll see, okay, the Fremont Chamber has signed on, the Dublin Chamber has signed on. And that's incredibly important, because I can send a member of Congress a letter with 1,000 chambers on it. If their local chamber is not on it, they don't really care. But if they know that their constituents' chambers are involved, that makes a huge impact. Fortunately, for the folks on this call, the Fremont Chamber is a wonderful ally to us at the US Chamber, especially on these huge issues that are happening right now during COVID. I know that we don't agree 100% of the time, which is fine. No two people will agree 100% of the time. But on those areas where we do find common ground, it's wonderful to have your support. Like I mentioned, we're in touch with Cindy. I'm in touch with Matt quite a bit. We're texting on a regular basis. We have phone calls. And it's wonderful for me to hear stories from him about what's happening on the ground, because when I turn around and I have conversations on the federal level or with other chambers, that I can share stories of some of the good things and some of the difficult situations that small businesses are involved in right now. So I really appreciate that wonderful relationship that we have with your team, because they do a phenomenal job. One additional area, which is not necessarily related to coronavirus, but affects California very tremendously, is this issue of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. USMCA is essentially NAFTA 2.0. I know President Trump came in and he said, I'm going to throw away NAFTA, I'm going to rip it up, I'm going to start all over. But quite frankly, USMCA is 95% of NAFTA. They did some updates to it for e-commerce and digital trade and intellectual property protections, but for the most part, it's the same thing. It went into effect on July 1st, and it's going to help out trade and agriculture tremendously throughout California. I know ag is huge here, so the service industry is huge here. So if you're involved in the trade community and international trade, I know international trade right now and supply chains are under attack because of the coronavirus, but at the US Chamber, we're free traders. We'd love to hear any stories that you're having about successful trade with Mexico and Canada. So if you've got any of those, please send them to Matt or send them to me. My email address is also in the chat section. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has, whether it's related to the PPP or any other small business issues on the federal level.
Okay, great. There's a couple questions. I guess we had a couple as a chamber, but we're going to take some of the participants first. And these are both on the PPP funding. And the first one, it comes from Kevin Nuss, who is a insurance agent, State Farm insurance agent in Fremont. And his question is, if you applied early and did not request more than 8 weeks payroll and rent, is there a way to do a supplemental application for expanded benefits?
So the initial amount that you get is only included the 8-week period. So as of right now, without any additional stimulus money being approved, there is no way. What they're saying right now is you'll get the loan for that 8-week period, but you can use it over a 24-week span if you didn't exhaust it. but currently you can only get one loan and it would be in the amount of 8 weeks. We'll see what Congress does next to see if they approve additional funding. And, you know, when the initial funding went through, everything we were hearing from Washington, oh, well, these shutdowns are going to last 4 weeks, 8 weeks. We're now going on 4 months. So Congress is going to have to do something. And so, I would just pay close attention and contact your congressman's office with any request that you have. Fortunately, in your situation, you've got a very strong ally with Congressman Swalwell. He supports you on this, but it's still good for him to have stories in his pocket. So when he goes back and talks to his colleagues in Congress, he'll say, look, I've got this restaurant in Fremont that's really struggling right now, and he can tell your story and use that as a tool to help get additional stimulus money.
Okay, so in that vein then, would you suggest that maybe the chamber could be a funnel for that? And if we were able to combine these stories to give to Congressman Swalwell, that would be a help?
Absolutely. Please get them to Congressman Swalwell and get them to us too, because oftentimes we'll have the White House contact us and say, hey, do you have examples of businesses who are in this current situation? Or, you know, committees will call us and say, hey, do you know anyone who could testify on this issue? We would love to hear those stories as well.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Napoleon or Matt to type into the chat our email addresses, Matt and mine, so that if any of the folks that are listening have questions or, I'm sorry, stories to tell that we can pass on to the congressman and to to Vartan at the US Chamber, that we can do that so we can collect all that information. So I'm going to go on to the next question, and that is Tanya has another question. She's the event planner, if you recall. Mm-hmm. She has been approved for the PPP funding, and she is questioning whether that money can be used to reimburse clients that have canceled their social events.
You know, that would not be forgivable, but I don't know if you're able to use it. You know, but beyond those categories that I mentioned, it would be for payroll, for rent, for utilities, for mortgage interest. So beyond those areas, the loan really doesn't have room for you to use that money. There are additional loans called economic injury disaster loans, and those loans might be able to be used for those purposes. But as far as the PPP, you'd have to double check with your bank, but I would say from the way I read it that you wouldn't be allowed to use it for that. Okay,
so but the EIDL loan you could if
you might be able to use the EIDL loan for that, yeah.
Okay, so let me.
And that you apply directly through the SBA.
Right, and okay, great, thanks. Then. You know, the U.S., one of the things that I have felt has been very frustrating is the flow of information. And it just seems like we struggle to get, you know, the facts, and then, you know, we get bits and pieces, and if people hear it, it spreads like wildfire, and we don't even know if it's correct at that point. So we always try to hold off as a chamber until we have all the facts, so we're not spreading around unuseful information. I'm wondering if there is have we learned anything as, you know, a government, from the U.S. Chamber, from us, about channeling communications on things like this in the future? I know that this is unprecedented, but it's just been really frustrating to get the right answers and to get the right information in the right hands.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if we've learned anything, just the information has been so difficult to get out. Because we would literally be told one thing from the SBA, and then I'd be on one of these calls with a local SBA manager, and I'd hear the complete opposite. They tried to do, for example, with this PPP program, they tried to administer one of the biggest loan programs that the federal government has ever backed in an incredibly short period of time. And I'm quite actually surprised at how well it went, in considering it was such a difficult process. So this entire process has been a fire drill. It's been incredibly difficult. There's been all kinds of information flying left and right. I'll give you an example. You know, some of the chambers took PPP money because the banks allowed them to, but now they're in a position where they might, you know, that they're going to have to give it back. But even the bank was telling them you're allowed when SBA is telling you you can't as a C6. So I think that's just a product of a huge program being administered in a very short period of time. But nonetheless, I think the chambers have been incredible in getting this information out to their members. I don't know what a lot of communities would do without the chambers. So I'm very grateful once again to all the work that you did, Cindy, on that.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm not alone. I mean, Matt, Napoleon, KK, Jennifer, our whole chamber office is really pulled together to do this. Is there, I know that you have shared a lot of information throughout the whole COVID-19 pandemic, and we've worked with you closely, but I'm wondering if there's anything that you could share that the U.S. Chamber is working on that, you know, as we see cases surge, is there anything going on behind the scenes that we don't know about yet that you can talk about that may be on the horizon that could help us?
Oh, you know, the main thing that we're working on right now is this phase 4 level of funding.
Mm-hmm.
I think that targeted industries and targeted communities are going to need additional help. So that's really the main push that we're doing. We don't know the trajectory of this virus. Nobody knows. I mean, if the information about the loan programs has been all over the map, the information about the health impacts of this has been all over too. You know, at first they said you need masks, then they said you need masks, then they said you can stay home, and so it's just we're trying to do the best we can to stay up with the most up-to-date information on the healthcare side so that we can address it on the policy side when it comes to loans and in helping the small businesses. For the most part, Congress has been pretty nimble considering how long it takes to get things done back there. You know, they have been able to come together on a bipartisan basis to do this PPP program. We're hopeful that in this next phase that they'll be able to do that once again, and hopefully also in the process help local chambers too.
Great. Okay. Just so everyone knows, so we can start collecting these stories, Napoleon has posted our emails in the chat, and he has also posted the link that goes directly to the SBA page for the EIDL loan. So if you haven't done that already, please make sure you make use of that. It's available to you, and there's still money. Do you know how much money's left on that, Vartan?
You know, I haven't seen the last dollar figure, and the nice thing about those EIDL loans is that if you apply for them and use them for the proper purposes, that it's essentially the first $10,000 turns into a grant. And they're saying that it could be up to $1,000 per employee that you have. So if Tanya has a 10-person employee shop, she can get up to $10,000 in an EIDL loan, and that first $10,000 would be forgiven.
Oh, Tanya, I hope you're still on and heard that. If not, I will. Oh yeah, she's still on the call. Good. Okay. Oh, she said thanks. Any other thoughts you want to share with us, Vartan, before we let you go for the day? And make sure, folks, if you have more questions, this is your last chance. So, Vartan, I'll let you go ahead and.
Thank you, Cindy, and once again, thanks to Matt too for all the work that he does on the government affairs side, and to your entire team at the Fremont Chamber. Please, I urge you to the members, please continue to stay engaged with the government affairs. Because a lot of folks say, oh, you know, politics doesn't matter. During the pandemic, we're seeing firsthand how much the politics of this matters. The PPP loans have been, you know, a factor of a business, whether a business stays alive or whether it folds. So the business community is being directly affected by what the government does. Please continue to stay engaged. Your members of Congress, as small business people, your voice means more to them than most other folks. And I know this because every year Gallup does this survey where they'll look at the level of influence that a wide variety of institutions have around the country. They'll look at the military, they'll look at banks, they'll look at the media, and they'll look at small businesses. Time and again, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican president, or whether it's a Democrat or a Republican Congress, then the industry that gets the most support, number one, is the military. Last year it was at 71%. Right behind them is small business owners at 70%. So what that means is that as small business owners, you have a lot of influence. Not only do your neighbors and your friends and family listen to you, but your members of Congress listen to you because they know that you're active and that you'll go out and vote. So whenever you have an issue as a small business owner, as a chamber, please make your voice heard to your members of Congress and also at the state and local level, because your members will, your elected officials will listen to you. You have a lot of influence and you can help get things done for your community. So if I can be in any way helpful, my email address is there. I appreciate all the work that the small businesses are doing to stay alive throughout this entire process. We think, whether it's in a few months from now or a few weeks from now, we think, there's hope on the other side. So if you hang in there, hopefully the federal government will pass additional stimulus help to make sure you get to the other side of this, and we'll hopefully see our small businesses thrive once we get to the other side of COVID. So thanks again, Cindy. I really appreciate all your leadership in Fremont.
Okay, thank you so much. And I appreciate you saying that, because that's kind of one of my pet peeves, is that sometimes small businesses don't really understand the impact that we can have in the government section of it. They join chambers because of the mixers or to make contacts, which is incredibly important, but they don't understand that every day when our Congress meets or when the Senate happens, whatever, they make decisions that affect our daily lives. And so it's incredibly important that we all be active in this. So thank you for saying that. I want to thank you one more time for being here with us and for your partnership in this. The U.S. Chamber has been incredibly helpful. I know Matt relies on you a lot for information, and we appreciate the time you spent with us. And with that, I also want to thank Matt Sinakarimian for all the background work he does. He always signs off before people get on. So you don't really see him, but he's in the background along with Napoleon Batalau, who makes sure that all this happens. So I want to thank them for all their hard work as well. And again, thank you, Vartan. Stay safe, and we'll be seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.